Hey guys, we are back working on the 53 Monarch by Ford Motor Company. The last video started to get a little long on me, so I had to edit some what I think is pretty good content out of it. I asked in the comments if people were interested in seeing a little bit more of the footage, and I decided to try and edit it down to something that's reasonably consumable. So here we go. Thanks a lot for watching. Hey guys, we are back working on the 1953 Monarch. It is a new day. It is not real nice out here today. Lots of wind. Hopefully it doesn't mess up the video too bad. I think what we need to do today is kind of go back to basics. We need to find the timing mark down there on the crank pulley, get it lined up with the indicator, verify that we actually have top dead center on the number one piston, make sure that we've got the correct wire going to the correct spark plug, because we've got enough compression that with a shot of ether this thing should fart. It should fire. Not necessarily run, but it should fire. Like that back cylinder, number 8, had 110, was it, yesterday when we checked it? And that is more than enough for this engine to at least, you know, it should regularly fart, and we're not getting anything. That tells me we are vastly out of time, like about 90 degrees out of time. I grabbed this printout from Van Pelt, and it's just taken out of the service manual. It's nothing too terribly fancy, but it tells us that where the spark plugs are supposed to be hooked up to the distributor cap and what the firing order is. That's useful information to know. And I can tell right now that our spark plug leads are not hooked up according to this diagram. That doesn't necessarily mean anything, because as long as they are, you know, approximately where they need to be for the rotor, you know, then we can adjust the distributor position to time it up properly. But I think we need to go back to the basics, make it right. So I'm going to grab some sandpaper, see if I can find that timing notch down there. The indicator is that is our timing indicator right there. It's a pin. And along this lip somewheres, there's going to be a little kind of a punch mark, whether it's a dash or a dot or whatever, that we need to line that mark up with, and that should be the top dead center for the number one piston. I think maybe I'll pull the spark plug out of the number one hole there and roll it over and see if we can get it, you know, reasonably close. That way I don't have to clean the whole pulley off to find that little mark, because it isn't the easiest place to get an arm down into to scrub at. Let me get going on that. I'll bring you guys back when we're done, and we'll see where things line up on this distributor. I don't know whether you can see it down there or not, but put a little dot of white paint on the timing mark. It's kind of like the head of a rivet in the rim of that pulley down there. And that is our top dead center, or, you know, lining up number one piston mark with the distributor. So, for a big reveal, let's get the cap off here and see where we're at. We should be pointed right here, if everything's the way it's supposed to be, and we are not even close. So what I'm going to say is that the distributor was not put in to the engine correctly. Let's recall, according to that diagram, number one is supposed to be pointed up in this direction somewhere. It doesn't really matter where we're pointed, as long as we know where we're pointed. So I'm not going to pull the distributor out and try and reposition it. That rotor is on there. Good. This is the used rotor that I pulled out of the one of my junk engines. Not necessarily the prettiest in the world, but it will do. So yeah, our firing order is... Oh, actually, the firing order is pretty here. The number one is pretty close. Yeah. Well, it might be a little bit remember that I adjusted the distributor a bit yesterday. So there, we should be pretty close. I'm going to say the point gap is a little on the large side. Supposed to be like 40 thou, which should be about like that instead of that. So let me dial that back just a tad bit. And loosen that off. We use this notch here to open and close that a bit. It should help us. I don't think that's going to be the magic bullet. And then the next thing we'll need to do is verify the firing order. Let me adjust those points, and then I will put the cap back on the distributor, and we'll try and verify what our firing order is, make sure that that is correct. On the piece of paper, firing order 154-86372. And the thing we need to keep in mind is Ford uses a little bit different numbering sequence than GM does, in that we go 1 through 4, 5 through 8. So we've got cylinder number 1. Let's put the spark plug back in it. You know, it might not hurt. Where did my piece of test wire get to? Let's just double check and make sure that we're actually at top dead center. It feels like there's a piston in there. Okay, plug back in. So number 1. This should be number 5, which it is. And we do number 4, which it is. We do number 8, which is correct. Number 6, which you are. Number 3, and is correct. Number 2, or sorry, 7, which is correct. Number 2, which is correct. So our timing should be pretty close, and our firing order is correct. Darn, I was really hoping we were going to find a smoking gun in there. We did adjust the distributor a little bit. So I can hear one cylinder kind of blowing back somewhere, I think back up through the carb. That's a stuck valve or a sticky valve or something under the valve. But the rest of them sound okay-ish. I think we're to the point where we need to do a differential compression test. I have this for working on airplanes, but it will work here as well, provided we have an adapter that will fit. And I think one of those threads either will fit in the Ford spark plug hole, or at least it'll work on one of the adapters that I've got for my conventional pressure tester. So what a differential pressure is, you put compressed air in, you adjust this gauge to be 80 psi, and then we see what we're getting on the outlet. The tricky part, of course, is that an engine is basically an air pump, and differential pressure is going to want to push the piston down if it's not perfectly at top dead center. When you're working on an airplane, you got a great big propeller to hang on to, and you can get a fair amount of force on it by filling the cylinder. The advantage to this type of compression check versus the conventional one is, by pressurizing the cylinder, we're going to be able to listen to the carburetor, listen to the exhaust, or listen to the oil breather, and we'll be able to decide where the oil or where the air is leaking out, and that'll be the culprit for what's causing our loss of compression. Unfortunately, I don't think my air hose is going to reach quite this far. I'll have to dig up an extension for that, and we'll pull out all the spark plugs and we'll start hooking this up and see what happens. I'll bring you back when I'm ready to continue. We're rolled over to top dead center on number 1. I've had to cobble together some kind of adapter set up here. Hopefully it's going to work for us. You are supposed to do this on a hot engine, but since it won't run, we can't exactly put any heat in it. We've got air hooked up to our gauge setup. I did preset it to 80 psi when it's flowing. Now let's see what we get. That's not good. I'm not hearing anything out of the carburetor. That means our intake valve should be good. Getting a little bit out of the breather, but most of it's coming out the exhaust, which I guess isn't that bad of a thing, but we've got maybe 18 psi there. That's not very good. But let's keep going and we'll see what else we've got. I guess we can go over and do number 5. It should be pretty close to top dead center. We got about the same pressure, 16, 18 psi out of 80. I don't hear anything in the carburetor. I hear a little bit out of the crankcase breather, so that's rings. I'm not really hearing anything out of the exhaust. We're certainly flowing air. Where the heck is it going? I guess the worst for number 5 is probably rings. I'll come over to number 4. That should be pretty close to top dead center. There we go, got it started. Ooh, that one's even worse. Getting a little bit out of the breather. I'm going to say most of that's coming from the exhaust. So 1 and 4 have exhaust leaks, exhaust valve leaks, which isn't all that surprising, I guess. Let's continue. Go to 8 next. Now, if we're not perfectly at top dead center, that could also make, if one of the valves is just slightly open, that could also explain why we're hearing the flow. Again, with an aircraft engine where you get a nice big propeller at the front, you can kind of rock things back and forth just a little bit to find, your perfect top dead center. We can't do that here, at least not easily. Should be pretty close. Well, did some research, and what they say is to use seafoam. This is a top engine clean and lube. Now, if we could get this engine to run, I would absolutely dump some seafoam down the carburetor, and we'd end up basically smoking out the entire neighborhood as white clouds billowed out from under the car. They kind of say that on an engine that isn't running, you can use seafoam, put it down around the rings, and it should, in theory, free them up. Unfortunately, the problem is if we just dump it down the spark plug holes, what's going to end up happening is it's just going to run past the rings and end up at the crankcase. And that's not going to help us at all. So I think what I'm going to try doing is putting the spark plugs back in the cylinders, and we'll just crank it over. Maybe even go so far as to hook up the spark plug leads again. And we'll crank it over, and we'll spray a bunch of this down into the cylinders. And if we've got it turning over, in theory, we shouldn't hydrolock anything. And with the low compression numbers that we're getting now anyways, any hydrolocking is just going to force the stuff past the rings and into the crankcase. So let me put the plugs back in, get the ignition hooked up, and we'll see how this thing's going to turn over. Maybe we'll take one more crack at putting a little bit of fuel in it and see if it farts at all. But so far, it's not looking good. I'll bring you back in a few minutes when I've got things staged up here and we can start trying to spray some of this stuff into the cylinders and see what happens. Well, guys, that was kind of the troubleshooting I did to get this thing to fire up and run. At the end of the Will It Run video, I still didn't have it quite so that it would fire up on 6 volts. But since then, running it a bit, get some heat into those pistons. The rings have let go. And now it fires up and runs on 6 volts. Not too bad. Give it a few squirts of gas. Hard to do with only one hand. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Greatly appreciate you taking time to watch the video. If you got this far in the video, can you give me one of those thumb up things? Give me a like. Consider subscribing to Doug's Messy Garage if you want to see more great content. Got stuff like this going on all the time. We got a few more little jobs to take care of on this car before the season winds down too much. We've got a hinge that I've got on order to get the hood working properly. And I still need to do some kind of cleanup on this thing. Haven't done any more than the original hose down. I've got lots more projects on the go. We've got a Jeep back there, a couple of Ford Coupes, a Buick, and there's a truck inside the garage. If those sound like things you'd like to see more of, by all means, hit that subscribe button. Love to have you come back. Catch you guys in the next mess. Thanks for watching.